the Pentax K-1. Pentax is taking on the likes of Nikon and Canon finally by introducing a full-frame camera, giving them parity to the sort of multiple tiers of camera that the other manufacturers have. Here's a look at it. It's big, chunky, very masculine, similar in style to the other smaller APS-C Pentax digital cameras we have. Obviously, when you see water droplets all over the camera like that, that means that they want to market it as being rugged and durable. And indeed, the Pentax cameras are weather sealed. That's kind of what they're known for. And when they market it, they always show it kind of in rain. Even at conventions and stuff, you'll see like drizzle or water being poured over the camera. They tend to have a whole lot of buttons on their cameras, and the buttons are really configurable. And in our test of the Pentax KS2, it was our favorite camera in a lot of ways. Pentax doesn't hold back on features. They give you one of everything. And as we go through this camera, you're going to see that it beats the competitors from Canon, Nikon, and Sony in many, many ways and comes in at a fantastic low price point. So we're really excited about the camera. Looking at the top of it again, you see this sort of like really chunky and masculine styling, and it's going to be really polarizing. But it works for some, and those of us who are more concerned about functionality wouldn't care anyway. This is their cross-tilt LCD, and I've never seen anything designed quite like this, but you're able to pull the LCD out and view it from an angle. So it's funny. It seems distinctly less functional than the traditional articulating screen that we might see on, say, a Panasonic GH4 or a Canon 80D. But perhaps they decided on this design because they thought it would be more durable. I can see kind of steel bearings in there and rails, and it does seem like it could be a really sturdy and weatherproof design. This has a 36 megapixel sensor without anti-aliasing. People are kind of suggesting that it is the same Sony-made sensor that we see in like the D800E and the original A7R. So I would expect with similar lenses for us to get similar image quality as we do on the D810, except that as we'll see, the K1 has some distinct advantages over it. It has an APS-C crop mode, much like the Nikon cameras do and the Sony cameras. I want to make the point, if you're planning to use one of the many APS-C Pentax lenses on it, you're going to be using only 15 megapixels of the sensor, assuming you actually crop down like that. If you want to figure out how many megapixels you get, you take the crop factor and you square the crop factor, then you divide the total megapixels by that crop factor squared. And so you don't, some people just try to divide it by the crop factor. Anyway, 15 megapixels will give you significantly less detail than you would get out of one of their APS-C cameras. So if you're planning on using one of the Pentax APS-C lenses, you're probably better off just using an APS-C body too. But I will say, from the videos I've seen testing the full frame K1 with those APS-C lenses, some of the lenses actually have a much wider image circle. So you actually aren't necessarily forced to crop down, but you can take advantage of much more of the full frame sensor. Nobody's really tested out the K1 before. This is Pentax's very first full frame sensor, so we don't really know what to expect. This one comes with 33 autofocus points, and it doesn't seem like that's matching the 5DSR or the D810, the other comparable cameras. Well, the 5DSR is much pricier. Well, they're both pricier. And those autofocus points aren't spread around as much as the D810. So that can be a little bit limiting, but nonetheless, on the APS-C bodies, the autofocus systems worked really well. So we expect to see the same thing. Still, it's not going to be a real sports camera. It's limited to 4.4 frames a second and can only capture 17 frames of RAW. There are APS-C bodies in the Pentax lineup that will continue to be better choices for sports. But for things like landscapes, this full frame Pentax should be amazing and maybe the best landscape camera ever made. It has 5-axis, what they call SRII, what Olympus calls IBIS, what Sony calls steady shot inside. This is sensor stabilization that moves the sensor to cancel out the effects of your camera shake as you're holding the camera. Manufacturers like Nikon and Canon build this into their lenses instead of in the bodies. But we've tested lots of cameras with and without this, and I love having the sensor stabilization because it allows me to stabilize fast prime lenses. And for low light work, this is simply unbeatable. You could strap on a 24mm f1.4 prime and go shoot events in a club with that wide open and take advantage of really, really long shutter speeds handheld. It means you can do night photography without a tripod. When you use that combination, it's incredibly useful, and it means you don't have to worry about getting lenses that have image stabilization. All cameras should have this. I'm so glad Pentax builds this into the body. I just wish Canon and Nikon would follow suit. They built in some cool little LEDs, which are almost like the lights that pop on in your car when you open the doors, just to kind of illuminate the camera at night. That's a novel feature. I like that. I like that Pentax is thinking outside of the box. Maybe the feature I'm most excited about is the pixel shift resolution. And this is working a lot like Olympus's novel idea of moving the sensor by a fraction so that when you take a picture, it actually takes 4 pictures in this case. And instead of just having each pixel in the Bayer filter capture red, blue, or green light, each pixel will essentially be capturing the whole spectrum because the sensor will be shifting up or to the left or right by 1 pixel. So it then combines those 4 pictures. That gives you much better detail and basically eliminates noise. So let's take a look at a sample shift here provided by our friends at Imaging Resource. As you look closely at the text there, you can see quite a bit more detail in the image on the right. Now, this was taken from one of their APS-C bodies, and it's not a camera we've tested, which is why I used somebody else's sample shot. But it shows you significantly more detail. How much more detail you get is going to depend on the lens. You need a nice sharp lens to see a big increase in detail. But our tests on the Olympus cameras showed just amazing amounts of detail. I'm a huge fan of this technology and a fan of Pentax for really innovating and putting in some new features. It also has auto level compensation, which I think is really cool because no matter how skilled of a photographer you are, if you take a picture of the straight horizon, the ocean, it's going to be a little bit off level. And what that means is you then have to, well, go back later and crop it down a little bit as you straighten it out. That reduces the resolution. So it can kind of handle that for you automatically, speeding up your workflow and just generally making your pictures look better without requiring any extra editing. It also has a really kind of crazy feature where you can manually shift the sensor from side to side or up and down, almost like simulating the effects of a shift lens, like in a tilt shift lens, so that you could actually change the perspective by shifting the sensor around. I've never seen that in a camera before, and it doesn't shift a lot. It just shifts a little bit, but still really, really cool. It comes with dual SD card slots, which is a must for any sort of professional camera because memory cards do fail. It is unusual that it includes SD cards and not CF cards. At this $1,800 price point, we tend to expect faster cards, but nonetheless, SD cards are durable, inexpensive, and readily available. Something other comparable cameras are lacking is a GPS and compass feature. And I love having a GPS in my camera body. I hate the external attachments, but when it's built in and your camera is remembering where you are all the time, when you load your pictures into Lightroom, they will show up on a map. So when you go back and you think, oh, I want to find this particular picture that I took in Tokyo, and maybe you remember where you were, instead of having to dig through your tags and your dates and in the Lightroom grid view, you can just zoom in on a map and find that exact picture. And it also works great for landscape or wildlife photographers who might want to return to a spot, but don't necessarily remember exactly where it is. It includes Wi-Fi because Pentax just gives you everything, all the features in it. And but we've tested the Wi-Fi in another Pentax camera, and it received our lowest grade ever. The Wi-Fi was the app itself was really bad. So we will hope that Pentax improves the app. After all, it's just a piece of software. They could update it. But the last time we checked, the app was just sorely needed an update. And that meant that we would never have used the Wi-Fi just because we found it kind of difficult. If you want to see the details of that review, go to sdp.io/Wi-Fi with the Y. As with other Pentax cameras, they brag about the weather resistance, and I just want to make the point that it's kind of impossible for us to test this in a comparative way. So their marketing material talks about their weather resistance, but unless we were willing to line up comparable cameras and give them a good soaking or drag them through a desert or something, we just kind of have to take their word for it. So good. I'm glad they put some effort into it. 100% viewfinder covered, something we don't care at all about, but a lot of people care about, so I wanted to mention. The video capabilities are quite outdated now. They're probably 3 or 4 years outdated, more than that. It's just 1080p, 30 frames a second. So you're not going to be using it as a video camera. There are much better video cameras at a tiny fraction of this price. Even my smartphone is a 4K camera now. I want to talk a lot about the lenses, because when you buy a camera, you buy into an infrastructure, and a camera body is only good as the lenses that you can attach to it. Pentax has a lot of lenses. You'd actually be amazed, but all their current bodies are APS-C bodies. So they have this, like, the single best lineup of lenses designed for APS-C bodies. And that's fantastic, because you probably want to avoid putting full frame lenses on APS-C bodies when there's an available APS-C alternative. But right now they have a really limited lineup of full frame lenses. So their naming is a little bit confusing, but their digital full frame lenses are labeled with DFA. And I could find 7 of those lenses. Their film full frame lenses, because they, of course, made film cameras for a long, long time, they're labeled with FA. But even their website kind of warns you that if you're shooting with a digital camera, you should probably get one of the DFA lenses, because they're designed for the intense detail that digital sensors provide, as opposed to the lower levels of detail that you would get from film. So if you're an old Pentax film user and you just love your old lenses and you want to use them, this is the camera for you, because you won't have any crop factor. You'll get the images that you will expect, but those images will not be sharp. So you'll be getting, they might be sharp enough for you, but they won't be sharp compared to images captured with lenses designed for digital, sort of the modern era of lenses that we have. They're just vastly sharper than the old film lenses. So you won't be getting that full 36 megapixels of detail, even though you'll be dealing with really big files. The Pentax DA lenses are those designed for the APS-C bodies. And like I said, they have 27 of those. Plus there are lots of third-party lenses designed for the Pentax APS-C system. So let's take a look at the full frame lenses that they have available. They have a couple of consumer zooms. So these would be the equivalent of the kit lenses. They have a $500 28-105 and a $1,700 sort of all-purpose zoom, the 150-400. Neither of these are particularly fast, and so that's why I say they're more consumer oriented. But don't worry, they do have that holy trinity. We'll discuss it in just a little bit. They have a couple of good macro lenses for you at reasonable prices. So if you're into macro photography, your options are covered there. Here's that holy trinity I was talking about. They have a 15-30 covering up to super wide angles at f2.8. They have a 24-70 f2.8 and a 70-200 f2.8. So this is important, because it's literally only in the past few weeks that we've seen Sony announce a full lineup of lenses like this for their system. In fact, Sony, I think they still don't have a super wide quite like that. So it is critical that anybody investing in a full frame system spending this kind of money have access to these lenses. And Sony has you covered. So in theory, you could shoot landscapes, events, even weddings with this range of lenses. It's kind of interesting because Pentax didn't seem to design 2 of those 3 lenses. They seem to be rebranding Tamron lenses. So this is the 15-30 lens, which we have on a Nikon mount here, and it's a fantastic lens. It is big and it is heavy, but it absolutely works fantastically. It's curious, though, that they're asking $250 more for the Pentax rebranded version, even though I think the only difference is that they've actually removed the image stabilization component. So because Pentax is putting the stabilization in the body, they've opted not to put it in the lens. That can be too bad, because those 2 systems can work in conjunction. Other manufacturers do that, and it gives you even better handholdability, but they've decided to take that out and then raise the price some. Who knows? Maybe they'll lower the price. Maybe they just have to pay some licensing fees to Tamron. The 24-70 also seems to be a Tamron rebranded lens. As you can see, they pretty much match up, but Pentax kind of gives it that knobby grip, and they are asking the same price here. But again, they've stripped out the image stabilization component. We have a review on our channel of the Tamron 24-70, and we found it to be an exceptionally sharp lens. We love both those Tamron lenses. There were a couple of big problems with the 24-70 though. For one, it has a little bit of a weird bokeh. Also, it has severe focus breathing. So as you start to shoot a subject up close, it becomes very, very short, like shorter than 50 millimeters, more like 40 millimeters when you get up close to a subject. So that could be a real deal breaker for somebody who's shooting kind of up close events and the like. If you're shooting landscapes and stuff that's farther away, won't be a problem at all. We also found it to be the opposite of durable. We actually broke it quite easily, and it feels kind of plasticky and flimsy too. Maybe Pentax in their rebranding has also made it more rugged. Maybe they've added weather sealing and stuff. We won't be sure. So I have to ask Pentax, why full frame? Because I don't take it for granted. I don't think there's a need, in my personal opinion. In the testing that we've done, working with a variety of sensors of different sizes, every test I've conducted myself and all the third-party data I've been able to find supports the idea that smaller sensors can take the exact same image as bigger sensors, provided you have equivalent lenses. Right now, I'm being filmed with Blackmagic cameras that actually have a 3x crop factor, and we put them in just in the last couple of months. All we have to do is make sure that we get equivalent lenses that can give us the amount of background blur and the focal length that we need. So Pentax already has an awesome assortment of APS-C lenses. Why go full frame when obviously they don't even have enough lenses? They had to actually partner up with somebody else to make their lenses, and they have the Holy Trinity covered, but you don't have options from third parties. The full frame lens lineup is obviously far more limited than those from Canon and Nikon that they're actually competing with. Why not just make a high-end APS-C body with 36 megapixels and make higher quality lenses for APS-C that can give you those equivalent results? Here's an example. The top lens here is the Sigma 18-35 f1.8. It's a lens that we tested and we loved so much that we've recommended it to thousands and thousands of people. When you put that Sigma 18-35 f1.8 on an APS-C body, you get results that are essentially indistinguishable from putting a 24-70 f2.8 lens on a full frame. And that was a kind of a breakthrough for us. When I put one of those on a Canon 7D and put a 24-70 on a 5D Mark III, and I couldn't tell the difference, really. When you put good, fast glass on APS-C bodies, you get the same results. Up until now, there just hasn't been the lens variety that we've needed to make APS-C bodies work. So I still have to tell people, if they want certain results, to upgrade to full frame, because nobody makes equivalent APS-C bodies. This is just a rumor, but I saw online that people are posting pictures of what looks to be a Sigma 50-100 f1.8, which should provide equivalent results to about a 75-150 millimeter f2.8. So now we have an APS-C lens that is equivalent to the 24-70 f2.8 and a lens that's pretty close to the 70-200 f2.8s that we love on full frame. So now you should really be able to get equivalent results with your APS-C bodies, and the reasons for upgrading to full frame are rapidly disappearing. So Pentax's timing is a little off, right? Now they're introducing a full frame body, but with no lenses. Another option would have just been to maybe rebrand these and make them Pentax, or talk to Sigma and get them to release them in a Pentax mount and just stick with that smaller sensor and not have to worry about making a whole new lens lineup. If you're curious about the facts behind the data I've just discussed about APS-C and full frame bodies, you just want more information, check out these two links, sdp.io/crop and sdp.io/ffcrop. There's a lot of information there, a lot of data to back it up. So will we be reviewing the K-1 and its lenses? I would love to. It would be a difficult task though, because to give it a fair run, I really need the body and at least the 24-70 and the 70-200. And the price for those is $5,400. So that's a whole lot to ask. That's a huge piece of budget that even the most wildly successful review would never allow us to recoup. I would like to borrow this equipment from Pentax. I've asked them for it. They just aren't writing back, but maybe they will. So we'll see. I'm mentioning this because people think when we don't review Pentax gear that we're biased against them. We're working for Canon, Nikon, Sony, and we just don't want to expose these cameras to the world. No, Pentax makes fantastic gear. The one Pentax camera we reviewed cleaned up. It completely beat the other cameras in so many different ways. And this full frame K1 seems to beat the Canon and Nikon alternatives in so many different ways. Most of those features those cameras simply completely lack, especially the sensor stabilization is just a game changer. So we'd like to get our hands on it. I hope Pentax loans it to us. If not, don't worry, it's not a conspiracy. If you want to pre-order it, go to stp.io/K1. Give us a like, share with your friends, subscribe for more details, and I'll see you later. Should be out in April of 2016. Thanks.